So let's switch a little bit toward facilities and budgets. So facilities are a significant factor in many educational models, perhaps least so in homeschools. But many school districts are under pressure to build new campuses, passing on significant costs to local citizens through raised taxes. Facilities account for a significant portion of most school budgets. While facilities are important, they don't really educate. Would you care to speak on what you consider essential facilities and what reasonable portion of a budget they should receive?
Right. Facilities you must have. You must have good facilities. I mean, it's sort of like being in a neighborhood. You have to keep your house up with everybody else's.
Yeah.
But facilities are an investment. And, you know, in Pennsylvania, I think it's every 20 years you get help from the state to update your facilities. But with a recent pandemic and with what we have faced, we have found that bricks and mortar really, we can look at it a little bit differently than what we looked at in the past. So you can capitalize on scheduling. You realize time is still an issue for us in education, how we package time. If we looked at packaging time differently, we could maybe do more with what we have and not have to build more.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, you know, you could have models of schools that are more of a college model, every other day, whatever. And that particularly is helpful for the the secondary level, because, you know, they're not as dependent as the lower elementary, you know, for parents working and stuff. You know, they can go home and it can be done. So you need to look at schedule. How can you package time differently? How can you package the school year differently? That could be an issue. The only facilities you really do need, if you're going to, would be like advanced labs, laboratories, and that science rooms are always expensive, band rooms. But you really could also do a lot of co-oping with other agencies. For instance, you could co-op with some businesses that are tied in your community, like to some of the what we used to call shop classes. You know, they would love to be involved. So you can look at alleviating that expense. But if you do have facilities, the one thing you must spend money on, which most districts cheat, is maintenance and custodial. Mm-hmm. Because the first thing a parent comes in, if those walls and floors aren't shining, you've already created a negative expectation.
Yep.
Custodial was #1 priority. I supported my custodians 100% to keep the rooms clean, sweep every day, pick up paper in the hallway. I mean, that's crucial. You take care of your building. Like I told you earlier, school buildings don't wear out. We just lose the energy it's needed to use them creatively. Now, I'm not talking about asbestos and that kind of stuff. That's stuff that's historical, but school buildings don't wear out. So we need to think about how to use them better. And so in your budget, really, other than building a new school building and going through all that process of plan, con, and so forth, you have to go through. A building doesn't cost you near as much as what it costs you to put people into that building. Your salaries of your personnel, your secretary, everybody, amounts to about 70% of your budget. So it's not the building. The issue is, do you have enough forethought when you are building that you're not building a Taj Mahal, but you're building something that will have longevity? Mm-hmm. And are there other ways you can use it? Can the community get benefit from it? We make schools almost an oasis that no one dare touch it, other, you know, in those off months. Well, heavens, we need to change our mentality about what that looks like. Remember, we talked about career planning. So I might find a group of kids that would love having a unique schedule where they work synchronously with a teacher online a certain time, so they're not actually in my school building. Nothing wrong with it. Or I might develop co-op programs and I did that. My superintendent says, can you have 100 less seniors in the building? He said, can you develop a program? I said, oh yeah, I can do that. So I developed a co-op program. So I took seniors and one of the juniors and seniors, and that they could go out and connect with a business. And I had a co-op advisor, and they could find out whether or not they wanted to move in that area for a profession. That was part of their career path. So I had kids going out with surgeons in the local hospital in Chambersburg, and they found out after spending a day with a orthopedic surgeon that they found out that being a surgeon was sort of like being a mechanic, that all you did was cut out joints and put new ones in. I mean, so there's all kinds of ways you can get creative. That's my job, to be creative. And I don't think there's much creativity in that side. But if you have it, take care of it, because it'll last. But most people, when they want to balance budget, they cut custodial and maintenance services. And that's the last thing you need to cut.
Yeah, well, that's kind of runs right into my next question. Services also account for a significant portion of many school budgets, especially in government schools. But so you got things like transportation, meals, etc. What insight, and we've already talked a little bit about that, but if you could kind of just maybe summarize, what insight and solutions would you give for services and, those essential services and the budget side of that?
Well, transportation is always a big one when you have a large school district. We were lucky. We actually had a bus buyback program. So we had a program where the buses were only with us, and then they would end up selling those buses, and so they would always be rotating new inventory in for us, and sort of we broke them in and then they sold them later. So we didn't own the buses. So that's an important piece. But you have to provide transportation, and there's a limit that you can provide, but you have to, and that's mostly dictated by law. And most of our kids that by law could walk didn't walk because we provided transportation. So transportation is a big thing. Food service is always a tough one. In the olden days, you got a lot of federal surplus. They don't give that away anymore.
Yeah.
If that would be one of the ways, if the governments would have food service, you could give, that would really relieve, because cafeterias really find it difficult to run in the black. Cafeterias typically run in the red because it's labor intensive, and the kids, they're a tad snoopy, and the menus are a problem. So a lot of schools have gone to contract services, bigger schools, and so they'll contract with Burger King or McDonald's or whatever, and they come in and subsidize. That's another way you can say. But yeah, those things you just have to figure out the best way of doing it. And it's unique to every environment. I mean, in the olden days, they used to have lunchtime and the kids could go downtown, but but that was eliminated for lots of variety of reasons before my time. But yeah, those things. But your cost, Melvin, always comes down to people.
Mhm.
If you're going to balance your budget, you got to cut program, which means you cut people. And people, that's why when budgets gets out of whack, that is where you have to go. You have to go to people. And if your enrollment drops, you have to eliminate people. And eliminating people is tough. And the other thing is, people are going to cost you more money.
Yeah.
Every year. They're more money in their salary, they're money in benefits. And of course, now contracts are being set that you do a lot of cost sharing, like with insurance and so forth. But really, the important part of building, going back to that one, is the planning up front. And are you planning long term, or are you just building something that looks nice? And again, I don't see enough planning. I don't see leaders thinking out. It's more like wanting to show off. I hate to say it. It's like having the newest car. the newest this or the newest that. I don't think it is the newest that's important. I think education can take place in a barn if you have the right people. People are the key. So if I had to invest money in building, I would invest money in people instead and not building. And I would invest money in thinking about other ways of delivering the service and looking at how we package time. Now, I'm not going to ask you how old you are, and I know how old I am, but you know, schools haven't changed much since we were in school. They still package it in little blocks of time.
Yeah.
We got to think about that differently, and it can be done, but we just have to get out of this model that we're trapped in. And we did some of that at Greencastle. We started that, and I think more can be done.